Hi, Dickens Reads families. It's me, Miss Rhonda. You can't see me. I'm going to do something a little different today just because of the type of book that this is. But it is book club time. And I wanted to share with you a book that I really enjoy, even as an adult. But it is titled Before They Were Authors, Famous Writers as Kids by Elizabeth Haidle. And this book features stories about authors when they were young, several authors that you know and love. Dr. Seuss, C.S. Lewis, Mark Twain, Maya Angelou. It is a really great book. I'm going to read the story about Maya Angelou because Maya Angelou inspired me so much to want to become a writer. And so I'm going to share her story with you guys. And just the way that this book is set up, as you can see, um, that's why I'm going to read it this way as opposed to reading it and showing you the pictures, because it would just kind of be hard to read and show the pictures. So, if growing up is painful for the Southern black girl, being aware of her displacement is the rust on the razor that threatens the throat. And that's an excerpt from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So, as you can see, this book has a timeline of her life and some story, kind of almost like I don't know, I think about like comic strip when I see the layout of this book. But let's see, what do we have? When Maya Angelou was only 3, her parents divorced. She was sent to another city with her brother. A tag on her wrist bore her birth name, and her birth name is Marguerite. And she went from St. Louis, Missouri to Stamps, Arkansas. Living with her grandmother in the South took some getting used to. In grade school, her attempt to recite a poem at church involved stuttering the first lines, forgetting the end, racing out the door, and crying all the way home. The shy girl who was paralyzed by the stage fright would eventually become a public performer. Marguerite would reinvent herself over time. At the onset of her stage career, she began to use the nickname from childhood, Maya. As a young girl, she never imagined she would someday find herself in jobs that required courage and confidence. Working as a trolley conductor, a dancer, a singer, an actress, and a speaker. And here you can just kind of see her progression in life. Let's Stamps, Arkansas. She moved to San Francisco, California, to New York. And here is her speaking at the White House. As a child, Maya learned not just to survive, but to thrive. She took comfort in her favorite things. This is her brother Bailey. He was the greatest person in my world, she said. Her favorite snack was pineapples. And she loved jazz. I could crawl in the space between the notes and turn my back to loneliness. At the age of 7, a terrible crisis occurred while she stayed with her mother in St. Louis. Maya quit speaking for 5 years. Fortunately, there were strong women in her life. Vivian, her mother, was a fierce ally, Maya recalls. Grandmother Henderson was a clever businesswoman who ran her own store, kind yet tenacious. She was a pillar in her community. A highly educated neighbor, Mrs. Bertha Flowers, became a mentor. She invited Maya to visit every week for tea and sent her home with armfuls of books. Maya learned to love the dance of words on the page as she memorized poems and recited her favorites out loud. She found use of her voice again. She loved the authors who spoke of the despair and hope familiar to her. When she was 14, Maya and her brother moved to San Francisco to live with their mother. Maya received a scholarship for drama and dance at the California Labor School. She was entranced by the city lights. The hills crisscrossed, the cable cars, and the characters who swirled through her mother's home. Loud jazz rang from the record player, a constant backdrop. Vivian Baxter taught her daughter to pursue her goals and push past any obstacles. However, when Maya became the first female black trolley conductor at the age of 16, her mother feared for her safety. On every route, even the 4 a.m. ones, Vivian drove behind her with her shotgun on the passenger seat in case of trouble. Maya transformed her identity through a variety of jobs. So here she starred in the movie musical Calypso Heatwave. She became a civil rights activist, fundraiser, and coordinator. And she worked as a journalist and newspaper editor abroad in Egypt and in Ghana. James Baldwin, a renowned author and poet, was dazzled by Maya's storytelling skills. He dared her to publish an autobiography. Initially, Maya laughed at the idea, but when she heard that the memoir was the hardest thing an author could attempt, the challenge motivated her. After writing for 2 years, she published her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, landed on the bestsellers list, and remained there for several years. And here's just some of the titles of her works. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is still one of my favorites. Writing about personal experience was a way Maya could heal her past. Over a lifetime, she wrote 7 volumes of memoirs. She wrote scripts for plays and television. Whenever she needed to focus, Maya would rent a hotel room. She would have the pictures removed from the walls, then lie in the bed writing on big yellow notepads. Her willingness to share her own stories with the world led Maya across paths with writers, activists, political leaders. Oprah Winfrey considered Maya to be a mentor. Here's James Baldwin and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and everyone knows Oprah. Maya said, when you learn, teach. When you get, give. She lived by those words, and one day, the very same little girl who couldn't finish a poem in church without bursting into tears grew into a woman who would stand in the White House reciting a poem of her own for the whole world watching. The horizon leans forward, offering you space to place new steps of change. Here on the pulse of this fine day, you may have the courage to look up. And that is the story of Maya Angelou. I hope you guys enjoyed it. The overall book is Before They Were Authors, Famous Writers as Kids. You might want to check it out and learn about some other famous authors that you enjoy reading their work.